George Kerevan.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. It might be considered a trifle unorthodox to make your maiden speech leading from the front bench of your party, so I trust members will forgive me, but I'm in fear of the whips. We won't oppose this bill, but we will. Actually, I would commend it rather more than my friend on the Labour benches. As I'm sure members appreciate, the SNP takes a broader and more positive view of being a member of the European Union and therefore funding it. As far as I can see, listening to the contribution from Labour, Labour appears to be wanting to be tough on Europe without actually wanting to be tough on the causes of Europe. I also think this congratulations due the government. It's quite interesting if you look at the contributions that we have made, the UK has made to the EU over the last 42, 43 years. The 5 years in which we made the largest contributions were the last 5 years. In fact, of the 42, 43 billion that the coalition contributed net to the EU in the last 5 years, that was roughly the same as the previous Labour government had contributed in 13 years. So you actually managed to double what you gave to the EU, which is a slight contradiction between the official position of the government, which is to be very kind of, tough on Europe, but I can feel for some of the conservative backbenchers who are more anti-Europe in thinking that the line the government takes in public is not quite careful. It's not actually what it's doing in reality with the EU. I'm somewhat in awe of being here, making my maiden speech in front of the Right Honourable Member from Wokingham. I remember many years ago when I was teaching, using one of his books as a textbook, and so I always treat what he says with great concentration and concern. But we here on this side of the benches are positive Europeans, and therefore we will the spending for the European Union. In fact, the way I would look at what we're proposing today, what we're going to vote on later on, is that we are willing our contribution to the European Union being able to tackle austerity, quite the opposite of what the Chancellor is doing here. It's interesting also, if you read the papers with the bill, that the Office of Budget Responsibility reckons that in the 7 years of the next spending period, the UK will contribute much the same net contribution as it did in the previous 5 years. So although the Prime Minister has made much of the fact that he's got the formal budget of the EU for the next period down, Britain's contribution in cash terms will be much the same. So in fact, all that's happened, I grant that inflation has will have reduced the real value, possibly by about 7%, depending on the outrun. But the cash reduction, there isn't one. We are going to be providing much the same contribution as we did in the last 5 years. So what's happened to the money that's disappeared with the reduction in the overall contribution limits? The answer is other countries have negotiated smaller contributions, smaller net contributions in real terms and in cash terms. Countries like Denmark, countries like Austria. So in fact, I can feel for the Right Honourable Member for Wokingham that his government is hardly managing to be as tough on the EU as it's pretending to be. If I could, though, you're bearing with me, if I could just, because it's my maiden speech, I can't go home without having said a few words about my constituency. Given how technical this debate is, perhaps a few words of diversion before we get back to the main and serious business might help. Madam Deputy Speaker, I've reached that age which in Scotland we call getting your bus pass. And I had expected over the last year that I would be spending most of my time after the referendum writing a few more obscure books on economics and tending to my improbably ambitious vegetable garden. And suddenly, the good folk of East Lothian have sent me here to represent them. And I could not be more pleased. And my first and foremost duty, and I have to put this on the record, is to represent them, all of them, whether they voted for me or not. And it's a pleasure, Madam Deputy Madam Speaker, to be in this august chamber. I, as a small boy in Drumchapel many, many years ago, fell in love with history. And in those days, the history that we did in school wasn't the history from below. It was, by and large, the history of this chamber. It was what some members may remember was the Whig interpretation of history. All history was the ever greater improvement of the British Constitution. And there are not very many Whigs left, actually. But I appreciate that, because this chamber has always been kind to people of members of my persuasion, Scottish nationalists, people who wanted self-determination for Scotland. Though most of the parties here have disagreed with us, we've always had a fair hearing, whether from whether it was the radicals of the Highland Land League in the 19th century who came here, whether it was the Red Clydesiders between the wars of the Independent Labour Party, different party from my friends here, or whether it was members of the SNP. We've always had a fair hearing, Madam Deputy Speaker. Where we take issue over the years is with the executive, but never with this chamber, and never with the Speaker. We've always had a fair hearing. And indeed, in future, in terms of, sometimes when there has been conflict between the executive and the Speaker, I'm sure in future if that happens, you can expect our support.